streamed.
Okay, Joy's going to hang up at this time. Thank you, Anita and Donna and Betsy.
Thank you, Joyce.
Okay, Donna, I'll make you host now.
Thank you.
All right. And if you could just make me co-host.
Yes.
Be great. All right.
Oh, I still have you as the host on mine.
No, I know. I'm trying to make you host. I'm
Gotcha.
just waiting for the little more button. Here we go. Okay, so I'm making
Okay.
you host. And if you can make me co-host, that'd be great. I'll be done.
All righty. You're a co-host. There you go.
And the captionings are working on YouTube, so you're good to go.
Great.
Okay.
All right. And Donna, are you ready to start the recording?
If we're ready to go, I will start the recording.
And be on the lookout for Megan.
Megan, I will do that. Yep. All right. Where is the record? All right. We are recording.
So we will wait 1 more minute until 11.
Anita, after introductions, are we all turning video off?
The committee keeps the video on. I'm going to have mine off because of the screen, so I can pay attention to that.
Okay.
The committee should keep their mics off unless they're speaking.
Okay.
I'll go over that in just a second.
And Bianca just confirmed that she's got the stream up and we're good.
Okay. All right, so it is 11, so I guess we will go ahead and get started. I don't see our last member, but we'll be on the lookout. Okay. All right. All right, oh, we have a member. All right, we have everyone. All right. Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. We have our interpreters, we have our captioning, and we have our members. So welcome to the Employment Service Organization Steering Committee meeting for April 13th, 2021. My name is Anita Mundy, and I am the Provider Programs Specialist for DARS. I am also the staff to this committee. I want to go over a few housekeeping things before we get started with the meeting. Due to the active state of emergency, this is an electronic meeting pursuant to item 4-001 of the 2020 Appropriation Act. Meeting notice has been provided. The meeting is being recorded and minutes are being taken. All votes will be conducted via roll call of voting members. Members are participating by Zoom. Meeting materials are posted under the Employment Service Organization Steering Committee's meeting tab, and it is on the link on your screen. Members of the public are able to live stream this meeting via the DARS YouTube page. Please be advised that if the live stream is interrupted, we will need to pause the meeting until it is restored. Public comment will be accepted by email to the attention of myself, Anita Mundy, Provider Program Specialist, and staff to this committee. Public comments that were received by April 6th, 2021 will be read during the meeting when we reach the agenda item. For all votes, we will do a roll call and you will be asked to indicate yay or yes, opposition, nay or no, or abstain. We have auto captioning and ASL interpreters that are provided. Go over a little bit of the housekeeping for Zoom for our members. Members, please keep your microphone on mute unless you are speaking. This helps reduce the background noise. Before you speak, please state your name. Not only does it help your colleagues on the committee know who is speaking, but also with documentation and notification for the public. Members, please enable your video, and please be aware the system may capture your image and video during the public streaming and recording. You may use the chat feature as well, and that will be monitored. You may also use reactions to do a thumbs up for an agreement or clap to raise your hand to speak. These are also being monitored. If you would like to review the real-time captioning of today's meeting, please click on the CC button on the menu bar at the bottom and select Show Subtitles. Captioning is not automatic for members in the Zoom. You will need to turn it on. For those watching via YouTube, captioning will be provided with the streaming. There is an ASL interpreter available for today's meeting. Okay. All right. My screen is okay. The purpose of the Employment Service Organization Steering Committee is to report to and advise the Commissioner on policy, funding, and the allocation of funds to employment service organizations for long-term employment support services and extended employment services. Okay, at this time, I'd like to hand the meeting over to Shirley Lyons, the ESOSC Committee Chair.
Okay, thanks so much, Anita. I did lose you for a few seconds, so if I go blank, keep going without me. So we're going to call this meeting to order. According to my computer, it's 11:05 a.m. And we will need to take attendance to verify who is here. So Shirley Lyons, I'm here. Robin Metcalf.
Robin,
You'll
you're
need
muted.
to unmute.
I thought you said we could wave.
I can't see your picture.
Okay, I'm here.
So if everybody could unmute and say that they're here. Jim Finnerty,
I'm here.
Chuck McElroy,
Present and accounted for.
Alan Hargraves,
Here.
Joanna Cito,
Here.
Megan Bergen,
I'm here.
Teresa Hall,
Here.
Chris Lavich,
Present.
Stephanie Hoer,
Here.
and Jason Harper.
Here.
All right, the committee is fully represented, so we have a quorum. We need to review the meeting minutes from January 12th, 2021, which you received prior to the meeting. I'll accept any changes or, oh wait, yeah, meeting minutes, yeah, okay. So if anybody has any changes or additions to the minutes from January 12th, or I will accept a motion to approve the minutes.
Shirley, I think there are two minor technical corrections. Under approval of the minutes from the October 6th meeting, shows that I made the motion, that you seconded it. And my feeble memory indicates that Jason provided the second for that item.
Okay.
And similarly, if you go to the last page on the 70-hour minimum requirement, the waiver of that discussion, I think I made the motion on that rather than you.
Okay, Anita, could you make those slight adjustments? Does anybody have any concerns about those adjustments?
And who is that was just speaking?
Oh, I apologize. That was Chuck McElroy.
Okay, so Chuck made the motion.
Sure, I'll make the motion with those two corrections to approve the
For-
Could
minutes.
we have a,
For the October 6th meeting, for the 70-hour minimum, was that Chuck that made that motion?
That's my recollection.
Okay, thank you.
all right, so Chuck has made a motion to approve the agenda or the minutes from January 12th with the minor adjustments. Could I have a second?
This is Stephanie. I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. We need to approve the minutes since we have a motion on the table. So I will run through the roll call one more time. Shirley, yes. Robin Metcalf,
Yes.
Jim Finnerty,
Yes.
Chuck McElroy,
Yes.
Alan Hargraves,
Yes.
Joanne Aceto,
Yes.
Megan Bergen,
Yes.
Teresa Hall,
Yes.
Chris Lavich,
Yes.
Stephanie Hoer,
Yes.
and Jason Harper.
Yes.
All right, thank you. You should have the proposed agenda for today's meeting that was sent again out in the package. At this time, the agenda is presented for adoption. It's in order for any member to move to amend the proposed agenda by adding any item that the member desires or adding any proposed changes.
This is Joanne.
Do I-
I would ask that we add impact of minimum wage on rates and EES contracts.
This is Chuck. I would think that would be covered under the agenda item for Letta's ESO rate discussion,
Okay,
rather than adding it as a separate agenda item.
that's fine, as long as we include it in the discussion.
All right. Thank you, both of you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
It's Joanne, I'll make that motion.
In a second?
Chris Lavish, I will second.
All right. Do I have to go through the roll call for this, or can we just call for a acclamation vote?
You could just call for an acclamation vote.
Okay. If everybody could indicate acclamation by unmuting very briefly and saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the agenda is accepted. Thank you all. It's now time for public comment. Anita or Donna, has any public comment been submitted?
As of today, no public comment has been submitted.
All right, thank you. Anita posted the public comment. It was asked to be submitted by April 6th. Since there is no public comment, we will now end the public comment period. So our first agenda item is emergency relief fund update. Anita and the staff are going to provide that update.
Okay. Let's see.
Anita, you're muted.
Okay, how's that? Okay.
That's better.
Okay, so in January, the ESOSC members reconfirmed the recommendation to Commissioner Hayfield for DARS to make available another round of emergency relief funding for ESOs through the projected balances of the Lettuce EES funds. The funds were based on unspent Lettuce EES dollars from the second quarter of the Lettuce EES state fiscal year, that's September through November of 2020. During the months of September through November 2020, 3,336 people were served using Lettuce or EES funds. Those funds were distributed on a per person basis, and that came out to $260.05 per person for the emergency relief funds for individuals served. I have on here the data from quarter one of fiscal year 21 and quarter two. So you could just see the differences in the amount of funds that were available for those quarters, the number of individuals served, and then the funds offered per person served. Okay, all funds were sent out, and the next step in this process would be to send out the spending report to all of the employment service organizations. And I'll be doing that within the next few weeks. Okay, and that's it.
Jim Fennerty with a question. Aren't
Yes.
we in the second quarter right now?
We are, well, we're in the third quarter now, beginning of that. What we were looking at is past spending of organizations. So
Okay.
that's what this money was based on. It was on past spending balances. So we're
And
looking
it's
at
not going January 1 to December 31. It's in between that starting.
right. We're using the state fiscal year, not the calendar year.
So
okay.
I'm going to actually make this a little bit more confusing. We're actually in the fourth quarter of the Lettuce EES fiscal year. We ended the third quarter in February, and I'm going to be reviewing those numbers in a minute. And so we started the fourth quarter on March 1st, March, April, and May. This Lettuce EES fiscal year is a little bit different than the standard state fiscal year.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Any other questions for Anita? So Anita,
Anita, you
just
may
to
have-
clarify. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Chuck. Anita, you may have mentioned, but how many organizations took advantage of the relief fund?
I don't have the exact number in front of me. I believe that I do have that information, which I can share with you, but I can say that there were 3 or 4 organizations that did not accept or respond to the offers. So there was some outstanding organizations that did not participate in the funds, but I can get that information for you of all the exact numbers.
So Anita, the 1,710,000 was that distributed, or that was what was available?
That was what was made available.
So do you
I'll
have
talk
the
about
number
that.
of what?
I'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
It's on my
that's
next
Donna's
Mhm.
piece of what's available that's coming up next.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Any other questions for Anita? Okay, hearing none, we'll move into the third quarter spending report. So Donna, would you like to take
Yep.
that on?
Anita, you're going to need to stop your screen share.
Okay. Oops. Okay.
And I will share mine. You all should be seeing that now. Right? Just can you confirm that you all can see it?
What I'm seeing is a blank screen, Donna.
A blank screen.
It's black.
Black.
It does, there's a notation that says Donna Benessi has started screen sharing.
And you don't see the Lettuce EES fiscal year spending summary.
No, it's black.
Okay, so let me stop my screen share. Hang on one second. Let's see what is happening here. Stop my share. It says my screen sharing has been paused. I don't understand that. Okay, let me see. I'm going to try something. I was using 2 screens, and maybe that's why I was using dual screens to see it in 2 different places. So let's try this again. And why is that blank? Shoot. Okay, hang on one second. Let's see.
Can you see this?
There we go. Now we can see it.
Oh, yeah,
I just put it up, Donna.
I can't see it though.
You can't see this?
I can't. Can you stop your screen share one more time? And let me
Okay.
see if I can put it up now that I made a change. Okay, let's try this now. How about now? Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, now we
Okay.
can see it, Donna.
Good. Okay, sorry about that. All
Donna,
right.
could you make it bigger?
Is that better?
So I will say that for the committee members, this was sent out, if I'm not mistaken, in your packet.
Yes, you all did receive this. You did. But is this better, Commissioner? Can you see it?
Yes, it is better. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down to the 3rd quarter, which ended February. Oh, that was not very centered. Good. Which ended February 28th. What you could see for that particular quarter, we had a quarter balance of for both funds of $847,332. Which has been is pretty much in line, a little bit more than what we had at the end of November. I think the holidays played a role in that. There was that significant increase in COVID cases over the holidays. We had the holidays that impacted people's work schedules. There wasn't an increase in COVID cases. People didn't work. Things had shut down again. So we did see an increase in the balance. Some of you asked what our 2nd quarter COVID relief was. So at the end of the year, we had $867,000 at the end of the calendar year. We had $867,000. That was our mid-year balance. So after 6 months, we had between the balance after the 1st quarter COVID relief and the 2nd quarter balance, we had $867,000. We gave out $795,000 in COVID relief, which left a balance after the 2nd quarter of $71,000, $765. We now have a 3rd quarter balance of $847,000. Which gives us a complete year-to-date balance of $919,000. I will tell you that balance does also take into consideration the outstanding balance that some providers have. So I accounted for that in here. So there is organizations, we do have some organizations in Lettuce that have already have outstanding balances, but I already accounted for this and that is included in this. So that's after we factored that in. So currently we have $919,000 outstanding balance. For the balance as of February 28th, without any COVID relief, is almost $2.5 million. But we've given out almost $1.6 million of that. So that's where we are right now. Let's see if I can move it over. See if you can see this. I'm seeing too many people. So the projected balances, if you look here at the end of Q3, we are projected to have a balance of $3,331,000 at the end of this fiscal year right now. And you've seen, you could see it, it's increased a little bit from Q2. I think that's because of the holiday spending. We might see an uptick. We're seeing people, continue to go back to work. And this number doesn't look right. Year-to-date balance. Oh no, this number is right. I'm sorry. in EES. We have, so if you look, we have a year-to-date balance in lettuce of $1.3 million, or almost, we have $1.3 million, and then a balance in EES of $1.15 million. Any questions on that before I move down to the comparisons? Or if you don't, the comparisons are there. We can look them over. This will all be posted online as well.
Donna, this is Jason. I have a question. I don't understand the total projected balance of Q3, because when I look to the left side of the screen after it says the final first quarter balance was 84,538. Final second quarter balance, 71,765.
This is before any relief has been given out. This is not with any relief funds.
In the bottom right is with no relief funds.
Right. This is of not spent on services. This is a balance of not spent on services.
Okay, got it.
Yes. So I wanted to be very specific that we gave the relief funds to spend that projected balance, but we also wanted to look at what we weren't spending on services.
Right. Okay.
So the final total will be, the final balance will be what we did not give to you all in relief, but we still need to know what we didn't spend in services. So the next page is, we'll start with EES. We'll start with, what is this one? This is the comparisons from state fiscal year 21 to, let's see if I can get it all on one page here, to state fiscal year 20. And you can see we are, of course, and we expected this, the projected balances are more than double what we had for state fiscal year 20. Oh, it looks like I missed a percentage right here. I need to update this actual percentage on EES right here. All right, I will go back and update this. And then after this, we posted each of the providers' projected spending and balances. I'm not going to go through these because you all have these, but you will see that we do have providers who are already into outstanding balances for both lettuce and more specifically lettuce. We have one provider that is outstanding in EES. And only one provider that's even projected to be outstanding in EES. But we will not have an issue covering balances. But you will have this. So. Questions on any of that?
Donna, this is Jason again. I have a question about, it seems like there are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vendors that have not used any of their lettuce balance. What's going on with that?
There's several different things. There are some providers that that were given projections when we added on new providers. This is the third year, I believe. Some of those will roll off. Some of those providers will now. You said 7 who have never used it. I'm looking at those now.
They count Portco though too.
Right, and they're not a provider of services anymore. There's a couple on here that are no longer providers of services. I don't see 7 that haven't used it at all. There's a couple of new providers that were added on this year, and they just haven't gotten rolling yet. There are some that just have not provided services yet, and some that will roll off. I'm going to give an example here. Lutheran Family Services of Virginia is not a provider anymore, but they have an allocation. So as long as I have an allocation, I need to keep them on this form to account for those funds until we reallocate those at the end of the year. And they will drop off of this for next year. And I didn't put them in green. I should have highlighted them in green. Other providers. Well, they have not used any of their lettuce funds this year or their EES funds this year. And we have not heard officially, but unofficially, we've been told that they will most likely be closing down their services.
What about this is Jason again. What about other providers that may be closing down? I know of another one, I think it was Branches, that's closing down. Are there others that are shutting the doors?
Not that we're aware of, that we've been told of. Yeah. And the same thing for the EES funds. There are some providers, COVID has impacted that. We have some providers that have not provided services through EES at all this year. We have some that have, and I'll give you an example of Greater Unity Employment Services. They have never used their EES funds since they received them, and this is going to be the third year. This is when they go into the 3-year rolling average allocation. They're not going to have a 3-year rolling average allocation. They will drop off now. And that's going to impact a few organizations that just have not used their funds at all in the last 3 years. Some, it's been COVID related, so we'll have to take that into consideration. Some have not used them at all for 3 years. And that's where we'll be, they'll drop off. Some that are COVID related. Yes.
This is Jim Ferney. Is the Lutheran Family Services going to drop off because of COVID or because they haven't used it in 3 years?
No, they are no longer a provider.
Oh, okay.
They decided that their program was too small, and then so their clients were being served by other providers.
Thank you.
Other questions? This is Kathy, the commissioner. And I don't know, since I'm not a member, I maybe shouldn't be speaking, but I'm speaking anyway. For providers who haven't used any of their dollars because of COVID, and the rolling average comes into play, is that something that the ESO AC should be looking at in terms of whether we drop them off or not?
Last year, we looked at that at the July meeting. So we did initial allocations for the beginning of the year. And then we looked at different scenarios and how COVID would have impacted the allocations. And we used projections based upon the first 3 quarters of 2020. So we may need to look at how we look at the projections for 2022 and make some recommendations at the July meeting like we did last year, because I think it will have some impact.
This Chuck.
So Kathy, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
I would think we'd want some sort of a request for a waiver or something from the provider rather than making the assumption that their lack of spending relates to COVID. Just a thought.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. I was going to suggest, and Kathy, thank you for bringing that up, because it was on my little note that I had made to myself, that I do think that there needs to be an outreach to each of the organizations and to receive some explanation. But I do like the idea of a hearing from each organization and their requests, whether they want to continue the allocation or not. And then at that point, we can, as a committee, agree to waive the rules or whatever. Because I do think that there are some organizations that it may be COVID related. There are other organizations who may be just not doing it. And if they're not, serving the same numbers of people or whatever, then their allocations should go down. So what's the pleasure of the committee in terms of a recommendation to to DARS around this issue.
Could I jump in there, Shirley?
Sure.
This is Kathy. I don't think it would be appropriate for the committee to rule on each individual's waiver request. I do think it would be appropriate for the committee to provide us some advice on how we make those decisions so that we set up a protocol. But I don't see that it would be good for each individual's organization's waiver to come to this committee.
Thank you. I don't disagree with you. I apologize if that's if it's came across as that. I was thinking more of a general recommendation versus a individual organization by organization. Right. I agree. The committee does not need to get into that. There's too many conflict of interest issues there. So I agree with that.
This is Stephanie. I mean, I think to me it makes sense, perhaps similarly as the relief process rolled out. Is there an application or a form that could be sent to those providers that either have not spent in that portion of the year or over the course of the years, and to simply provide a narrative explanation, in the same format that then could be evaluated by DARS personnel?
Thank you. Other thoughts?
Hi, this is Jim Fennerty. I think that they should definitely be given a chance to explain, because the COVID scared the life out of so many people in the beginning, and they shut down and everything. Even the hospital shut down for a long time. It's the people that were working in the office of the hospital. And Bon Secours, that is. And the thing is after it was after people all started wearing masks, a lot of people started getting rolling, or at least partially rolling, not all the way maybe, but partially, and that can be definitely affecting a lot of these service organizations.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Because, for example, if they were working with me and I was working in the hospital, I didn't work for 4 or 5 months. So they couldn't be doing anything with me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep, I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Chris Lavish. I think I agree with Stephanie. Application or not, perhaps just some kind of narrative, a letter sent to folks, whether that's everybody that is behind, or there's some threshold that's sent for to kind of narrow down how much response you guys would get. But I think some explanation or even forward plan to understand how we're going to do this. I feel that without something, certainly DAR's oversight is important, but this committee will be forever in this position with little information and really kind of figuring out, how much money needs to go back to folks. I think everyone here wants to serve people and make sure the funds are used correctly. So I think that information would be paramount. Thank you.
This is Robin. I'd like to bring up the question regarding the organizations that are struggling. Will any technical assistance be provided to them?
Technical assistance such as?
I mean, there are a lot of small organizations that have not been able to deal well with the pandemic, and I'm just wondering if DARS can provide technical assistance in any way.
I think that would depend on the type of technical assistance that they would need or would like.
I support that measure, because I think some organizations, the shutdown didn't really affect too much. They're in essential services type things, but others were affected. So I think it's got to be taken on an individual basis. Jim Fennerty, thank you.
think we're certainly open to providing technical assistance and support. We would have to know what that would look like and what that would be, and make sure that it's within our scope.
Obviously, yeah. I just, with the years of knowledge and expertise that is available, there might be some assistance that can be provided just to help them maybe not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but keep the wheel going.
The wheel moving. Yes. My other thoughts as we've been talking, and this is a question that the committee might want to answer or look at or consider, is a recommendation around, as you can see, after the third quarter and the projections, they're not, mostly everybody is going to be underspent this year, where we could keep everything the same going into 2022 and not do a 3-year rolling average this year, keep everything the same, work with those organizations, still look at the organizations that haven't spent their dollars, get that information. We don't have to, a lot of organizations allocations may be impacted. Now we're looking at 2 years. Everybody keeps moving, I'm sorry. 2 years of low spending, impacting those 3-year rolling averages. I know we did it differently last year, but we may not, it might impact that 3-year rolling average. We could look at just giving everybody what they got last year, starting out the year that way. We know we have enough dollars to fund everything going forward. No one's going to be not receive or not be covered for what they spent and what they do. We could just go forward so that nobody's losing any money next year, and that everybody will get what they they'll get covered for all the services that they're providing. That is an option to consider. Then we work with the organizations that didn't spend their money. And if they don't want those funds, we could reallocate those. We just put those back into the pot.
If I can just make a point of reference, would there still be a need to reach out to vendors to make sure we differentiate between those that absolutely are not using their funds because they're no longer a provider versus those which may have been severely impacted by COVID and not have spent their funds? Or do you just know, which ones are absolutely not using money because they are no longer a vendor?
I think they're still a vendor. They're not using, the providers that are not using specifically those EES dollars or those lettuce dollars are typically the group employment providers who are using Medicaid. And they have not been providing services to non-Medicaid clients or individuals without Medicaid, so they don't need those dollars. And they're not providing the individual support and employment for the lettuce dollars. And that's why they're not using them. If that's going to change, then I think we should know that. But if they're not going to provide those services, then we also need to know that as well. But that's typically what's happened. The organizations that are still providers, they just serve Medicaid waiver individuals with Medicaid waiver.
Other people on the committee who have not spoken yet, if you'd like to chime in a little bit so we have a good discussion around this.
This is Chuck. I think it's a bit of a slippery slope to abandon the 3-year rolling average. Recognizing that almost everybody's down. So basically those that are utilizing their funds get penalized if we basically throw out the current fiscal year from the fiscal 22 allotments.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Megan or Alan?
Yeah, I agree with Steph. This is Alan. I apologize. I agree with Stephanie and Chris, just having some type of communication from DARS. for the vendors to kind of state their case of why they're not spending their dollars and their plan to spend their dollars in the future if they have any plans. Like Donna mentioned, most of them probably serve a Medicaid waiver at this time.
Hi, this is Jim Fennerty. I think we ought to also consider that because of a lot of jobs being lost during the shutdown, there needs to be supported employment services have had to go out and look for jobs that can accommodate the person's disability during this time, and it's been more difficult because there's less providers available due to the shutdown and things of that nature. But it doesn't mean they haven't stopped spending money. So it's a little more complicated than the shutdown means they stop doing everything. That's what I think we just need to consider.
Okay, thank you.
This is Chuck again. I guess the issue there, Jim, would be that those should be VR dollars rather than lettuce dollars if we're talking about placing people in new jobs or even retraining once they go back to work.
I understand. Thank you.
So, and I hear, Chuck, what you're saying about the 3-year rolling average. I also think on the flip side of that, there could be some organizations that are significantly impacted with huge reductions in their allocations because of COVID and the spending. So that's something, so, yeah, we could see some significant reductions in people and some significant increases where it'll be well beyond their means of spending because of how we do that now. We could see some organizations lose a third if they haven't spent this year, and it's just because they've been closed because of COVID, or they could lose up to a third of their allocation.
Just checking. I don't feel strongly. I just think it needs to be on the table as we look at whatever recommendation we might have.
This is Jason. Just to kind of help me understand here. I counted up there are 9 organizations that are projected to have a positive balance at the end of the year. Everybody else is going to leave money on the table. So how does that work when you do the 3-year allocation? If only 9 have spent over what they had, but everyone else left money on the table, how does that work?
Well, when we do the 3-year rolling average, it's based upon what you actually utilized. So we would then bring in the actual utilization for 2020, the actual utilization for 2021. So if you're an organization that left a large amount of money on the table for 2021, say you only spent 50% of your funds, then for 2020 and 2021, your allocation is going to be greatly reduced because we average that.
But if everybody's, basically everyone's allocation would get reduced, where does the extra money go?
Well, then once we do it, how we base that on is, so say everybody spent $100,000, all total, all the organizations spent $100,000. So this year, organization A spent $80,000 and everybody else spent the $20,000. Organization A is going to get 80% of the pot because they spent the 80%. So we do your percentage of the whole of what your utilization was. That's how much you get of next year's pot.
I see.
So that's how that can impact it. So what your 3-year average was, how much you spent, what your percentage of the whole that you spent is your percentage of what you're going to get of the pot next year.
I see. Yeah, and I agree with what you were saying, Donna. This year's just basically an outlier of all the other years, and it could really mess things up moving forward. And for those 9 organizations that are going to spend more than they were allocated, I predict that next year we're still going to be, we've had years of balances. There's going to be enough left over to fund anyone that needs extra.
This is Chris. I think I agree with that. And Jason, there should be some money left over for those 9 organizations. But would it might be easier, given that we know there's going to be money left over, to kind of put in a special dispensation now to say that any organization that didn't spend their lettuce could kind of be frozen at this point? And so you're not losing, and then the 3-year rolling average be applied to any organizations that are going to be able to spend. Seems like that would work out for everybody and still be able to spend the monies.
This is Stephanie. I agree with that. I think perhaps, we think about maybe a waiver, for the year or something that would be specific or distinct only to this year without taking the rolling average formula off the table.
So explain that to me a little bit more, Chris.
Well, anybody's welcome to jump in. I think I'm just saying that the organizations that are not projected to spend their dollars would be somewhat exempt, like Stephanie was saying, or I was saying their money were frozen. Any way you want to say that, things aren't changed because, here we are in a global health crisis. And then the 9 that are eligible for the 3-year rolling average, no reason to hold them back. If they're using it, we need to spend the dollars.
So you're saying,
Go ahead, Donna.
So you're saying apply the 3-year rolling average to the organizations that are spending it. Okay, and then I see what you're saying. So that they
freeze
can
everybody else, so they're not
they
losing.
can bump up, right? And then, right.
So another way of looking at it was if you could apply the 3-year rolling average to the whole group, but if your rolling average is under your current year allocation, you basically apply whichever's higher, the 3-year rolling average or this fiscal year. So nobody loses.
Well, potentially,
so
because it depends on how much those nine organizations jump up. We have to be able to cover that increase because all the money's allocated. So we would have to be able to cover that increase. But I'll look at that. Okay, I can play with those numbers, and that I like that idea. We may be able to cover it with organizations that are no longer organizations and their allocation.
Right. Yeah.
So
in theory, those guys would have that 3-year rolling average anyway, so that we would be awarded that in a regular year.
Right.
And hopefully the savings from those folks not meeting their allocations would cover that alone. But yeah, thank you.
Excuse me, this is Jim Ferry.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Have any of these organizations, like so many businesses went under, have any of these organizations gone under?
We've had a few that will no longer be providers next year. So I think right now there are 3 organizations, 3 or 4 organizations that started out this year that will no longer be organizations next year. Okay,
well, as long as that's clarified, that would change the balance also.
We just have to make sure that if we apply it to the whole, we could increase those 9 organizations allocations so high that we don't have enough money to cover it, and we have to take away from the other organizations. So
I don't think, this is Jason, I don't think there's enough. I just kind of did some rough math on the 9 organization. They're going to be about $300,000 over. And I don't think you're going to have $300,000 worth of funding going out from those other organizations. So it'll have to be cut from somewhere.
Right. And when you're applying it percentage based, okay, we'll have to look at how we can do that, but it's an idea, and I'll talk with our fiscal folks and see if maybe there's somebody there that can give us some ideas on how to do that.
Just one more question. This is Jason. So is it going to be too late in the July meeting to discuss this because the lettuce fiscal year starts in June?
No, because we did this last year. We gave everybody initial allocation. That was good for 1 quarter of lettuce EES. And this is how we did it in the past too. We gave out what we called an initial allocation. That was good for about 25%. And gives us enough time to do additional allocations. So we did it last year, and that's when we talked about, we realized, hey, if we use all of 2020, everybody's allocations are going to be significantly impacted. So we went for the first 3 quarters of 2020, and that's when we made those changes. But it wasn't until the July meeting that we did that. After the end of the 2020. So no, we'll be okay to make that final decision. So what we'll do is we'll do initial allocations, which will probably be about 25% of what this year was. And then we'll look at in the July meeting to make final recommendations.
So Donna, is it possible for you to still do the little survey that we had discussed, and maybe one of, asking, are they going to use their funding would be the first question at all. And then maybe the second question was, do you anticipate that you will gear up to use your funding if allocated similar amounts, so that we would have some record on, some, and it wouldn't have to be like, they don't have to swear on their, their Bible or anything, but just, that we get an indication, are they looking at gearing up, or are they anticipating this will go on for an extended period of time? That may help us in July when we look at how much money we have as a gap, where we can, where that money could come from, or how we would do that allocation differently.
And this is Jim Fennerty again. Also, if a bunch of people have gone under, is that not gonna, aren't the people that need services gonna be delegated to other organizations?
Yes.
So they may need a little bit more.
That's already been done. Yes, that's being done now for one organization. The one organization that did that earlier this year, that's already been done, and the one organization that's happening now will do that. Absolutely.
Okay, well that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
So the question is, do we need a motion around this, or is just this discussion enough, Donna, to guide you guys, or would you prefer it being in the form of a formal motion and recommendation from the group?
I don't think we need a motion. I don't think there's anything here for a motion just yet. That will be in our July meeting. Yeah, I'll work up a couple of different scenarios that we'll look at in July. And then from there, I think we can make a motion and a recommendation.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is any further discussion from the committee regarding this? And or anything else in Donna's report? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the use of lettuce EES projected balances discussion.
So to put that back up on the screen, Shirley?
Yeah, please. Okay. So we're here again, as we've been every quarter since the fiscal year began, and we have a projected balance. And Donna, I'm assuming we should be working with the 919 or the 847.
No, the 919 is a total year-to-date balance.
Okay, so we are looking at $919,097.54 to be exact, in a balance that we're anticipating. So can we have some conversation about how we would recommend to the commissioner that this money be allocated or spent? Anybody?
This is Chuck. Obviously be in favor of another round of economic relief grants, but I would like to double back to Robin's question about providing technical assistance and trying to get some sense for what that might look like, Robin. Because one option might be to include some of the money. I don't know, the DARS could develop any kind of technical assistance by the end of the fiscal year, but I'm just struggling to vision what that training might look like on lettuce and ES.
It wouldn't necessarily have to be training per se. It could be just helping an organization on an individual basis. DARS used to provide technical assistance to ESOs, especially when they were starting up. And I just think that the pandemic has put people in a situation to almost be starting up again. You know, it's a new world that we're living in. And I think just it's been hard for some organizations and agencies to figure it out. And so there might be some individual consultation that DARS could provide. I'm not talking about anything that's a big deal or lengthy or in depth, but, you know, maybe some, you know, hints, and maybe other ESOs can provide some input to DARS, who then could work with the ESOs that are struggling.
And that wouldn't cost anything.
Excuse me.
Right. Go ahead, Jim.
Are you referring, Robin, to some technical assistance in that you might need to reestablish relationships with businesses that have gone under, and now you need to move into new businesses? Is that how you're
that could be one
technical?
Jim, that could be one example. You know, I mean, there's a million different things that could be done.
Right.
But, you know, what is it that happened to that particular organization that has put them in a position to, you know, not be doing well now? And, you know, I feel strongly that competition's a good thing. And we need, you know, we need providers out there. And I don't want to see them all go under.
Yes, I agree with Robin. This is Alan. I apologize, Jim. I'm out in the rural areas as well. Counties are so big, resources are extremely limited. And with minimum wage going up, I can see a real stranglehold for coming, because the minimum wage is set to go up in May, then it's set again to go up in January. I can just foresee a lot of agencies struggling to, one, find talent, for two, to just find some type of capital, get on their feet. So maybe some type of communication, because I was at a place yesterday, I don't think the city has Wi-Fi. I think Long Island, Virginia, places like those. I welcome, like Robin said about competition, we need vendors in those rural areas.
Right.
It's not,
yes, good point.
And look at, you know, look at the Eastern Shore, for example, and some of the other, you know, either underserved or completely unserved areas. We still have parts of our state that are not being served at all.
Yeah, the counties are so big in the New River district. If you go like the Halifax, Mecklenburg, the counties are so big, but there's a lot of places that don't have access to simple things such as Wi-Fi.
Right. So we can certainly look at doing some type of an assessment, a needs assessment, as to what the needs are. It kind of goes back to, I was just thinking about when, you know, a while ago when Heather and I were touring the state and working with organizations to add on supported employment services that maybe weren't doing supported employment services. And that was, you know, an example of technical assistance that we've done. But I think we can look at doing like a needs assessment and what do providers need, and what are they looking for, and seeing how we can put something together. But I think that's a great idea.
This is Teresa. I love this, and I do think that's a great idea. But I'm going to go back to the comment that Alan just made, which was my concern, is finding people, finding the talent. I mean, we can put money in the world into this, and if we can't find talent, are you all seeing, and just from the parent side, looking at trying to find people to help, you know, me or whoever else with, you know, just not lettuce funding, but just to try to find people in general. Are you guys seeing the same thing? And regardless of the money we allocate, if we can't find the people, we're still in square one. I mean, any ideas there?
This is Joanne speaking, Teresa. That gets all the whole conversation back to rates for all the various services. You know, and the differential between what Medicaid waiver truly funds versus what straight out DARS money would fund in terms of the requirements that we have for staff and for documentation. But, you know, regardless of where we are in the Commonwealth, finding staff is very difficult. I mean, rate differentials, it just doesn't matter. I mean, I think everyone is concerned about the minimum wage increase for May, but even more concerned for the one in January. And when you hear, not even so much on the employment side, but just some of the small residential providers, you know, it's very possible agencies will go out of business because of the inability to compete with the way the rates are set.
That's an excellent point. For a lot of small businesses, it's a giant increase.
Yeah, this is Chris Lavish. I had two things on my list, and one of them was certainly hiring folks, recruiting talent, particularly in rural areas, as Alan said. I don't know how we can approach it to make it, you know, equitable, but, you know, even if it was trying to find staff, you know, some kind of funding to try to help with recruitment in rural areas, I think would go a long way to providing services to the folks that are, you know, not only DARs, but on our lettuce rolls with everybody. So that was one of the things I was definitely had on my list. The other was about project search and transition, those programs being affected by COVID as well. But I think the thing that's probably the most important is making sure we have, as you guys said, the talent out there, particularly in more rural areas where it's hard to get folks. And if there's a way to channel any funding towards that rather than towards, you know, each of us ESOs to do what we will with, which is wonderful. And it's helped us. And
I've also had a request for a short break. So I'm going to throw this out here and then I'm going to ask that we break for like a 5-minute period just to give everybody a little chance to get up and move around and, you know, get a cup of coffee again or something. But it seems to me that we could say as a committee that part of our recommendation is that there be an allocation of a certain amount of the funding that we would ask DARs to look at maybe technical assistant grants. And I'm calling it that. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but that would be in addition to the, if we agree that we want to do another economic relief fund, that we could ask them to
Shirley,
set aside
Shirley, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just got word that the YouTube stream just froze up.
So is that a time for a break, Donna?
Maybe, Shirley. So we have to, unfortunately, have to stop the meeting if the YouTube stream freezes up. Okay, and they just told me it's back up.
Okay. Sorry for all of you watching. If we froze on you, we stopped talking. So you didn't miss anything. So we're glad you're back. I will finish my thought and then we will take a 5-minute break. My thought was that we look at possibly allocating a percentage of the money. I don't know if we want to say a certain amount or a certain percent that then organizations could apply for and they could use it in a variety of ways to help their organization get back on track. And Chris, it could be a grant to help do some special recruiting in localities. It could be, you know, getting some technical assistance from, I don't know, George Mason or VCU or something like that to help them individually. I mean, it could be the organization could make a decision and put in a request for DARS and then DARS would determine, you know, how, if that grant would be provided to them. So I'm just going to throw that out there for kind of food for thought. We're going to take a short break. I've got 12:07 by my clock on my computer. So I'm going to say we will come back at 12:15, if that's okay for everybody. We'll take a 7 or 8 minute break and then we will proceed with the conversation. So we'll see you all back here at 12:15.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, you ready to clap on video?
I think so. I did that now.
Start. Really want to
Okay, I think everyone is back. So we will recall to order, I guess, from our break. So we have some items that have been thrown out on the table. So the two I have on my notes are another round of economic relief and the possibility of some kind of technical assistant, for lack of a better word, grant kind of opportunity. So thoughts from other committee members, other ideas, motions, etc.
So can I chime in?
Sure, Donna.
Well, I like the idea. We can certainly use the money, or you can all make recommendations on how to use the money. It is $919,000, and we're already in April, and we will still have a balance to deal with. That I'm afraid that's going to happen at the end of this quarter. That we're still going to have to figure out what to do with, and I'm afraid that we're going to still have additional funds left. We're probably going to have another $800,000 balance at the end of this quarter that we still have to deal with. And I'm not sure how we're going to be able to deal with that. That's going to be a conversation that we have between now and the end of May or the end of June. So a lot of technical assistance can happen. There's no cost to that. I think between now and the end of this fiscal year, we wouldn't be able to spend a significant amount of dollars on other stuff other than getting these funds to you. I'm afraid that if we don't do something and we try and figure out other ways to spend it, we might not spend it by the end of the fiscal year. It's kind of late in the game.
Donna, this is Robin. So you're saying we're really going to have about $1.7 million at the end of June?
Well, we already have 919,000 now, and it looks like we've been around 800 to 850,000 each quarter not spending. So if you have that 919,000 and then we add another 800 and even $800,000, we're 1.7 million.
Okay, so what you're saying is we have to figure out how to spend $1.7 million in 3 months.
Yeah.
Well, the whole committee could, take a vacation, but other than that, since we know that that's against all the rules.
I'm thinking at least this $919,000. It would be critical at this point. We can't spend money that we don't know how much we actually have for the last quarter, but I'm afraid if we don't focus on this 919,000 and you all just disappeared from me.
We're all here, Donna.
Okay, good, because you just all moved and disappeared on me.
But we can see you and hear you.
Okay, good, because you just are all disappearing on me. Are you all still there?
Here.
Yes, we're here, Donna.
Because I can't see anybody anymore.
Yeah, I see the interpreter. That's it for me.
So I want to make sure that we just do get that money out to everybody. Where did everybody go?
Well, I think the first proposal was to do what we've done in the past. Donna, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I think, for right now, we ought to go with the first proposal. The technical one is really more of a bit of a long-term one.
Right.
Well, and I'm wondering if we make it in 2 different proposals, that gives DARS a start to look at that other $800,000 that they could put up, because I understand that we're working kind of a month behind, but we also recognize that there will more than likely be a balance of some amount, even if we all go on a, lettuce spree in the next month and, spend down a little bit of it. We're all not going to spend $800,000 extra in the next couple of months. So I wonder if we make that recommendation around the economic relief fund with the 919,000 that we know is there, and then we make a recommendation around how to start evaluating, and at least we would then be looking at encumbering some of that money from the fourth quarter, so that it's not sitting there and we're looking in July at what did we not spend that we didn't even suggest a way of spending.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we should definitely go with emergency relief funds for the money that is there right now. No doubt. But just for kind of future consideration. And like Donna said, the technical assistance stuff doesn't, for the most part, doesn't really cost any money anyway.
And for the this is Alan, for the organizations that historically haven't applied for the emergency relief funds, Donna, do we probably we can project that they won't apply for it this go round as well as possibly the next go round? What will we do with the excess funds? Because that will leave a balance as well, correct?
Yes, well, we wanted to actually, the ones that didn't respond to it at all the first two times, we wanted to not offer it to them this time. Talk to this committee about not offering it to them. They didn't respond to the first two requests. We've had organizations that have turned it down twice.
Right.
That, so we've thought at this point, there's no sense in even offering it to them, taking it out of that, them out of that, and then just allocating that or offering it to other organizations that have accepted it.
Okay.
But you don't think it was because of COVID that they turned it down?
They turned it down for various reasons. They turned it down for various reasons. They may not have felt that they could have spent it.
So Donna, so some of the, this is Alan again. So some of the organizations that may have maybe only two or three clients in the letters portal, they get $260.05 per client. It comes out to, if they have three clients, come out to like $780.15. Would they be able to apply for just a little more funding? Because like Robin mentioned in the past, like I don't look at other vendors as competition. I kind of look at them as partners. The more advocacy in the area, the better off our services are. And so if some of them may need some extra funding, would they be able to apply for it?
This committee hasn't talked about that and hasn't made any recommendations about that. And that's something that this committee certainly can make a recommendation regarding. But we've kept it equitable by per person. That was the recommendation this committee made, and that's how we kept it.
Okay.
But this committee can certainly make another recommendation.
Okay.
Do you know, this is Joanne. Donna, do you know offhand with how many vendors or what the amount of money is that those vendors did not receive?
Well, the amount of money was the balance, which I believe was $71,000.
Okay.
And I think it was 5 vendors. I want to say it was a total of 5.
So would that be added into the 900? Or
the 919 includes that.
Okay.
Because it was 847 and change that was the balance for the third quarter.
Thank you.
So I think what the difference would be, Donna, correct me if my math brain is not working correctly, but instead of saying if they total served, let's just say 30 people, because that's pretty easy for me, then you would decrease the number of clients being served by those 5 organizations. And so instead of paying for 3,136 clients, you would pay for 3,130 clients. And that would be where your math comes in. So per person would go up instead of, because they would not be counted. Is that
right?
rudimentary way of understanding.
That's how we do it. Yep.
So the allocation, that by not including those, I think she said 5 organizations, that would mean that the allocation per person could possibly go up. And that would be where we would be planning on spending that $70,000. And so we would be planning on spending the entire 919 versus last time we were $75,000 short of spending the money that we had suggested that be spent. So does that help, Joanne?
Yes, it does.
As to how that.
That's Jim Fennerty speaking. That's a good point. But have you thought about people that aren't getting served in certain areas needing to go to other areas to be served that they might not be too far from?
Right, and that, Jim, can be in that second proposal of how to spend, maybe to start looking at spending the unspent balance from the 4th quarter.
Okay, all right.
I think what I'm hearing is that we would make one proposal to spend the 919 and then offer suggestions of how they could look at trying to start spending the balance left over from the 4th quarter, which they won't know till the end of May, I believe, right, Donna? That would be when the final.
It'll be mid-June. Everybody after we do all the reallocations.
And a lot of businesses aren't going to be picking up to their pre-COVID levels of business for maybe a year or two, maybe even more, some of them. So they're not going to need as many employees. That has to be factored in also, because it cuts down on the number of job placement possibilities.
It does, but I will say that we are seeing more people being served. We're seeing more plans being written. We're seeing more people getting jobs and going back to work. So we do expect more people to be going into long-term services. So we will see more people going into these funding sources, utilizing these funding sources for services, especially lettuce.
Okay. Well, I hope so. That'd be great for business and for
any other comments from committee members who we haven't heard from?
This is Megan. I'm sorry I haven't been all here. I had my second COVID shot yesterday. I'm not feeling too well. But I do like the idea of let's do the COVID relief fund for the 919. And I do like the rural relief sort of for the 4th quarter. I support that. I think that that's would be a good use of those dollars.
Well, they traditionally they don't get funding, isn't that correct? The rural areas.
There's no about or no territorial connections to these funds. So.
Okay.
Do you need some sort of official motion? Shirley, this is Joanne speaking.
Yeah, that's where I was headed next. I just want to make sure everybody had had a chance to participate in the discussion if they had other thoughts or wanted to comment. But yes, if someone would like to propose a motion.
This is Joanne. I'll propose the motion of the 919,000 be divided up per the same formula as last time to those vendors who are participating in the program.
This is Chuck. I'll second that.
This is Jim
Sorry,
speaking again.
Write it down.
I have a question. Do we have services on like the northern neck part of the state? Like in Kilmarnock and those towns?
Not as much as we'd like, but we're working on building that capacity out there.
Okay. I know that's not a rural deserted area.
It's pretty rural though.
It's fairly rural, right?
It is.
Okay, Anita, did you get the motion? I have it as that we use the $919,997.54 for relief, emergency relief funding, using the same formula as in previous quarters to those vendors who have participated in past quarters.
I got it.
Joanne, did I get that accurately?
This is Joanne, yes.
Donna, does that give you what you need in terms of not using those 5 vendors? Or do we need to be more explicit about that?
I don't know.
Did we say to those vendors who have accepted the money in the past quarter?
Maybe. Yeah, that would be good. I don't think there'd be any additional, well, there could be additional people if they started providing services this last quarter, and maybe they weren't. So,
As more people get vaccinated, I'm sure it'll go up to closer to the former levels of.
Well, you're right, Jim, it will. I'm thinking of one provider in particular that didn't provide services the first and second quarter, but has the third quarter, because they were just getting started with lettuce.
Okay.
So we wouldn't want to do something that would leave them out of the loop.
Okay.
Hey guys, this is Chris. How necessary is it for the exclusion clause, given that these guys aren't typically applying for the monies anyway?
Well, the problem is if they get offered and don't accept, then that's money left on the table. That's the issue. In the last 2 quarters, or the last couple times, we've had between $70,000 and $80,000 left on the table that could have gone to other, to other providers.
Yeah, I totally get that. Could we do something where we justify the dollars first?
The commissioner is raising her hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am not paying any
Madam
attention to hand raising.
Chairperson, why don't we just call them first and see if they would want to utilize the money, and if not, then we don't put them in the pool.
Yeah,
agreed.
We can do that.
Okay. All right. So we don't need to have it in our motion. So the motion around participated would cover, and you can check with them first and before you do your calculations.
Right.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, so that would not need to be incorporated into the motion. All right, so we have a motion on the table to take the $919,097.54, using this as an emergency relief fund, using the same formula as in the past quarters to those vendors who have participated.
Yes.
We have a motion by Joanne and a second by Chuck. Do I have any other discussion?
So I think based on that last point, that Joanne's motion needs to be amended to exclude those who have participated in the past.
Okay, to lettuce and EES vendors.
Joanne?
Yes, because Donna, I'm sorry, this is Joanne, because if I understand correctly, DARS will reach out to those vendors who have not participated in the past to determine if they would. If they are going to participate, then they're in the pot. If they're not, whatever amount of money, it would be the 919,000.
So how about if we say to act lettuce and EES vendors?
I think that makes the most sense. Yeah, this is Stephanie.
Joanne, would that be acceptable?
Yes.
Chuck, do you agree?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion has been amended to read, we will recommend that the $919,097.54 be used as emergency relief funds, using the same formula as in past quarters to active lettuce and EES vendors.
This is Joanne. That's correct.
So, all right, thank you, Chuck. Just to verify.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're good. Now, we would like to call the question. I'll do a roll call if I can find my piece of paper. Please unmute yourself and agree yes to the motion or no to the motion. Shirley Lyons, yes. Robin?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
All right, the motion has passed with no decline or abstentions. Blech. Is there any other conversation? Is there any other motions that anyone would like to make based on the conversations that we've been having?
I just have a question. And that is how can you determine the rural area support needed in all the different rural areas?
Well, Jim, I'm gonna just say that that's really not a purview of this committee, and that's something that DARS will be looking at, and they are looking at and trying to provide assistance to folks in those areas to get more vendors.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Okay.
Then after they get approved by DARS, then you'd have to figure out the amount.
Right.
I got you. All right, thank you.
So committee, is there any other motions that you want to come out of this discussion, or are we ready to move on to the next topic on the agenda?
Ready to move on.
All right, hearing none, we will move on. Commissioner Hayfield, you're next on the agenda. We're so glad you could join us today. We've missed you the last couple meetings, so come on in and give us your wisdom.
Excuse me, Shirley, do you want to have
yes
the discussion, the specific discussion about rates?
That's did I miss that on the agenda?
Yes.
Yes, I did. I'm so sorry. Commissioner, can you hang on for a few more minutes?
Yes, I can.
Or we can flip the agenda, Kathy.
I'm fine.
I wrote and missed my agenda item. Sorry about that. So the next item on the agenda is lettuce ESO rate discussion. I asked that this be put on the agenda last meeting just to see if the committee wanted to have any kind of conversation about the current rates that were being paid for ESOs, given the fact that there have not been cost of living adjustments in the last year or two, and seeing if that impacted or could impact the use of the lettuce funding, if that could be one of the reasons that ways we could utilize the money that is left over each quarter. I'm open to other conversations. I know there was a conversation that wanted to be had about the impact of minimum wage. So I'll open the floor for discussion.
So if I could just give an update prior to the discussion, I know that Dale Batten and I are talking about rate adjustments for ESO rates in general, and we'll have more information about that in early May. We're not, things aren't finalized yet, but there is discussion about rate adjustments for ESO rates. We didn't do that last year at all, so we're just trying to figure out what that will look like. But that's just for ESO rates in general. It's not specific to lettuce EES or VR rates.
Right. And most of us in our agreement, it's all in the same agreement, right, Donna?
The rates are the same.
The rate. Yeah. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Other committee members?
Well, I just heard on the news today that the CPI was quite large for the first time in years. And that's the inflation rate. We've had very little inflation over the last 4 or 5 years, very little to none. And it's already projected to be quite larger in the next quarter. And, you know, it's might even go up from that. So the rates may need to be adjusted in that respect. I'm just adding that in.
Good information.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
And gasoline, it's gone up some 30%.
True.
So a lot of prices are starting to go up.
This
Shirley,
is
I think
Joanne.
All right.
Oh, this is
Go ahead,
Joanne
Joanne.
speaking. Along those lines, Jim, things are going to go up because minimum wage is going up.
Yeah, that's true too.
Although, you know, ESOs may not pay quote unquote minimum wage, there's going to be compression with salaries and rates of pay across the Commonwealth. There also is an impact on organizations that might do some sort of small group employment in terms of pay rates for the clients versus contract rates. That might not be necessarily a Lettuce EES discussion point, but those are all factors that are going to contribute into rates and adjustments in the future.
Good point. Good point.
Who else? Somebody else was trying to talk when Joanne spoke.
This is Chuck. It still may be prudent for the committee to put on in the form of recommendation that the increases in rates will help with the utilization of lettuce and EES dollars.
Okay. Other thoughts? Chris, did you unmute on purpose or by accident?
I was going to say something, but somebody already covered it. So keep moving forward.
Okay. Anyone else? Chuck kind of made a suggestion for a recommendation. Thoughts on that suggestion?
Chuck, can you rephrase that, please? This is Joanne.
Well, I was just saying that even though Donna indicated that she and Dale were working on the potential for rate increases for vendors, that we go on record in the form of a motion indicating that the increase in rates will in fact help with the utilization of unspent lettuce and EES dollars.
Good. How are you?
Do you want to make that as a motion, Chuck?
Sure. Don't ask me to rephrase it though.
So Anita, did you get all that?
Well, in my little notes here, I just have increase of rates will help with utilization of unspent lettuce EES dollars, but that's more of a statement. What do you recommend?
I guess the recommendation would be we support an increase in the vendor rates.
Just a clarification, do we want to recommend any sort of methodology with that, or can DARS share does DARS have a methodology that they're going to adopt when looking at a rate increase?
We're kind of looking at all of those. There's the SSA COLA increases, there's a CPIW index. So we need to kind of look at all of that and then look at impacts.
So are you thinking flat, because the last rate increase was a flat increase? It's like a 1.8% across the board to everyone. Whereas in years past, vendors have submitted a request for what they would like their rates to be.
Yeah, have not made that decision yet, but probably going to be a flat across the board.
And
this is Chris. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
For our organization, that wouldn't be as much of an issue. You know, we have, you know, we're somewhere in the top 10 for rates, but I do think there are some vendors out there that historically have been very low, and when they get the flat rate increase, they stay, you know, they're kind of far off from some of the other vendors. So I would actually like for it to be a process where vendors submit an application for their proposed rates.
Other committee, Chris, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, would it be easier in terms of writing the motion out that we just posit that if should there be overages, that the committee recommends that any overages go towards the much needed rate increases for vendors, thereby spending down some of the unused dollars?
Could the vendors, this is Jim speaking, could the vendors project any kind of numbers that they might need, factoring in the increases? Or is that not possible?
This is Kathy, the commissioner. I think that if there are organizations whose rates are substantially below the average by some percent, I'm just thinking out loud, Donna, you could give them the opportunity to take a look. So there could be if we do an increase, there could be a flat increase. And then there could be, if there are outliers, we could look at them or something like that.
We do have a few vendors that their EES on-site rates are oddly low, like oddly low. I was just looking at some the other day. And so we could certainly look at those. Like almost like was that a typing error? A low kind of. So we certainly can, yeah, look at something like that. I think that would be, yeah.
So we have an unseconded motion on the floor. So Chuck, do you want to amend anything, or would somebody else like to propose a change? The motion as we stand is that we recommend to DARS and support an increase in vendor rates. That was Chuck's statement. No one seconded that motion. So we just need to know, is there some changes in that motion, or would someone like to second that motion?
Good day to you. I think anything beyond that's going to go beyond the scope of this committee. But I think just to, support rate increases is in line with the purview of this committee.
Okay. Do we have a second?
This is Teresa. I'll second that.
All right. Thank you, Teresa.
Thanks, Teresa.
Well, I like to listen to all the feedback because you guys are the ones that are out there working, and sometimes I feel a little underqualified, but listening to everything, all the comments, that does make the most sense, because we can't get into a situation where we're trying to talk about something we don't have the right to do. So.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion? All right. Since it is a formal motion, we will do a roll call. Gotta find my. So we have a motion on the table from Chuck, seconded by Teresa, that says we recommend to DARS and that we support an increase in vendor rates. I vote yes. Robin,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes, I agree with that.
Chuck,
Yes.
Alan,
Absolutely.
Joanne,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
Chris,
Yay.
Stephanie,
Yes.
and Jason.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carried. Any other discussion regarding this topic? Hearing none. Now, Commissioner Hayfield, you're on.
Hello, everyone. I think I was going to say good morning. I believe it's afternoon. So good afternoon to all of you. And I first want to start by thanking you for continuing to serve in this capacity. It's so obvious to me that your advice and input is critical. When you all agreed to be on this legislative body, I know you didn't expect it to be this complicated and impactful on the whole system. So thank you very much. And you all bring your own perspective to the process. And Teresa, don't feel bad. It is a complicated process. And so you've all been very helpful. And we appreciate having this input. This would have been kind of tricky to do on our own. So it's, although I wasn't, cheering when this legislative body was developed, I definitely see now that it's beneficial and very much helpful to us as we navigate this whole pandemic. But the good news is there is a reason for optimism right now. The weather's better. It's nice and warm, even though I wore yellow today on purpose, because that way if I leaned up against my car, it wouldn't be obvious that I was covered with pollen. And more people are getting their vaccinations. Personally, my husband and I are now fully baked, I call it, fully vaccinated. And as a result, saw our Asheville family and 2 granddaughters last weekend, whom we hadn't seen since December of 2019. That was a big deal, and that alone helps me feel more positive. And I know I'm not in the least bit unique. As Donna said just a bit ago, we're seeing more people being served by ESOs, and we're seeing people get jobs. But as you know, our VR applications are down. And they are all across the country. I was on a call last week and someone from Alaska was saying their applications were down 30%. Well, ours are too. And your help in ramping up those referrals would be beneficial to us as well. So we just need to get the word out there that there are jobs, that if you have vaccines, life is safer. It's something we all need to be doing together. Believe it or not, it was just about a year ago when we at DARS made the decision to curtail public-facing services in our DRS offices. We have our DRS offices, well, our counselors never stopped working, but we haven't been having public-facing services. It's been more of an exception. We've been working mostly virtual and had some one-on-one appointments that are appointments, not walk-ins. And I remember when these conversations started, we all thought, oh, this is going to be short-lived. We'll close the offices for a month or so. And then a month or so, we said, we'll extend this. And you all have never stopped. And I know that and really appreciate it. We regularly talk about how this pandemic has impacted the frontline workers. And I know it's also impacted the ESO leadership. We've kind of all been adjusting our sails to catch the right wind and see where we go. And the fact that these emergency relief dollars have been available, I know has been a big help. And I'm really happy we were able to make these decisions ourselves. Many state agencies have had to, who work under regulations, haven't had this kind of luxury that we've had. And it's really been nice to be able to work with you all and to make the decisions to just push the dollars out there. If we had had regulations, we would have had to have had waivers, and this has been great. So there's a lesson there that we want to be careful that we don't legislate things too much so that the definitions of these programs are so tightly defined that we can't do this kind of thing. And there actually were some tighter regulations, Donna, or not regulations, legislation put around EES that I was thinking of as we were talking about technical assistance that we probably should look at, because I think that it was tightened up as to how we could use the dollars. But anyway, that was just a little side note that I was thinking of as we were talking about that we want to be careful not to be so tight that we can't adjust our sails like we have this year. I also want to thank you for making yourselves visible and being responsive as a whole system. You've not only responded to the workforce needs, but you've also advocated for medical needs of people with disabilities when they weren't being prioritized for early vaccines, and helping get the word out there of how to register to make sure that people with disabilities were put in those priority groups. And many organizations, SILs, AAAs, brain injury organizations, you all have been on the front line helping make sure people get vaccines. And I really do appreciate that. And I think that has been one reason why people have continued to get jobs, and the flow has kept going. We've kept the pipeline going as much as possible. Earlier in the meeting, we talked about need for technical assistance and consultation. And those of you who've been around a long time, like I've been around a long time, remember that back in the economic development days, we had a technical assistance fund, and we would pull money out of that economic development money and put it aside, and people could apply for, it was an easy application process. It wasn't an RFP. And essentially what would happen is that the specialists like the Anitas out there would have conversations with an ESO, talk about the needs they were having, and then almost together craft a simple application that wouldn't have to compete against other organizations. And we would have a list of consultants available. And if it was under, in those days, it was 2,000. Today, it might be 5,000. If it was under a certain amount, we didn't have to jump through as many hoops. So there might be a good opportunity here to pull some dollars aside, and maybe Donna and Anita could come back to the next meeting with an idea of how to set something simple up like that. Because the last thing we want to do is come up with some ultra bureaucratic process that we're not going to be able to get people to want to go through. And since there is money available, and organizations, some organizations are struggling, or maybe some organizations aren't struggling but just want to take a different path, this would be a good opportunity for us to just improve the quality of the system by using some of these dollars. But again, we have to look at what strings are attached with the EES dollars from that legislation that passed a few years ago. That's about all I had to say, but I'd love to have any questions. And I could make up answers for you.
This is Joanne. Kathy, I wondered when you had those discussions at the national level, this is nothing to do with lettuce, but are there discussions about the persons who have had COVID, the long haulers, who are probably down the road going to need assistance to enter new industries, get different types of work, have accommodations? Has that started to be discussed at all? And I have no idea how many thousands of people there will be across the United States, but I'm sure there are thousands who have been gravely impacted by COVID.
I just saw Dee Dee pop her face in and now she's gone. But I have heard that brought up at some meetings, and I think it's kind of an unknown, but there is talk that COVID-19 is creating a whole new population of people with disabilities that we'll be seeing in the future. And Dee Dee, have you heard any of that in your meetings?
Not yet, but I will say I've heard it on the news, so I do expect we will get new referrals in the long run from some side symptoms and longevity of side effects. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Dee
Dee. And that, again, this is Joanne, that could be where, training and technical assistance would come in, would be welcomed by employment vendors, I'm sure. It will be like dealing with the trauma of a traumatic brain injury, a stroke, while you're recovering, or just coming to terms with what you're able to do now in terms of employment. So I do see it as unfortunately, a new population of persons who are going to need long-term supports.
Right. Robin, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Joanne, the most recent information that I heard is that 1 out of 3 people who have had COVID are going to have neurological and/or mental health issues. I know there are definitely some neurological deficits, and obviously there's going to be mental health issues. They didn't really distinguish between the two, but they did say 1 out of 3. And my husband's been vaccinating, and he has met some long haulers. And I know one gentleman he met the other day has been out of work for 10 months, and he doesn't know what he's going to do because he really and truly doesn't think that he can work, or let's put it this way, if he's going to work, he's definitely going to need assistance.
Right. And then there certainly is the impact of COVID that even for people who haven't had it, that's looking like post-traumatic stress for people as well, just from the isolation and losing their jobs and all of these things. So
being afraid to leave their house.
Mm-hmm. Right. I even know some people like that.
Yes, it's had a bad effect on a lot of people. I know a few people too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Kathy, I have a question about, I think we were told, Donna, at the last ESO meeting that counselors are now going to start to ask clients when they do the intake if they've been vaccinated. Is that accurate? And if so, what's the next question that's going to be asked?
They're asking clients basically vaccinate and vote if they need help being vaccinated, if they need help voting. So we're kind of adding that on to their intakes. And then we're just looking at if they need help being vaccinated, and then how we can help them to get vaccinated. Just like we do with voting, we've kind of added it on to that.
But we're not asking people in order to provide them services.
Right.
And that's kind of a tricky, it's a balancing act that we're all looking at the legal ramifications of that. And so, as you know, I'm sure, so are employers struggling with that. Did you have thoughts about it, Robin, that you wanted to share?
Well, I mean, they're saying now that employers can require their employees to be vaccinated. So if that's true, I would think that a lot of us, as we look for jobs for folks, are probably going to run into employers asking those questions. And then, we're going to have to deal with that issue. So, and typically we are the ones who deal with it, even if the counselors ask the question. Since we're on the front lines, we're going to have to maneuver and negotiate through those kind of muddy waters. So, I guess we need to know from you if somebody needs help. Let's say they can't make an appointment because they don't have a computer, or they don't even know where to go. They don't have transportation. What do you recommend we do at that point in time?
Well, right now we have kind of two things going on. One is that Dee Dee's been working with her offices that employment support specialists are working with consumers in terms of setting up transportation and that kind of thing. But if people are already on your rolls, I think that's something we can talk through in terms of, especially if you are looking at employers that are already requiring it. I think it's an appropriate expenditure.
Okay. I know we also have a lot of folks who are on the lettuce rolls. I know we still have quite a few who lost their jobs, who haven't gone back to work yet. So it's going to be a question with those folks also. So I don't think you all would be as worried, and I'm not as worried about the folks on lettuce regarding the expenditure to help them. But the clients that are new, I think that's, I had the question more about the clients that are new.
Well, if I could just interject, Jim Fennerty here. My job, I have a job working with the public, and they required I get a vaccine at the job. I already had the vaccine, but I'm getting my second one next week, but they require it because I'm working with the public, and they can be held liable if they have somebody that's perhaps not vaccinated that's working with the public directly, and they could be spreading. Somebody could catch it theoretically from them.
You're right.
Absolutely.
So it's becoming more and more accepted, I think, by a lot of employers.
Dee Dee, do you want to respond to that? Deputy Commissioner.
Hello again. I do believe that we need to help our customers in any way we can. If they need employment and vaccinations, what they need, we can't demand they get it at this point, but we can actually, as you work with them, we would be in agreement that if the job says they need to have it, we are okay with you saying you need to have it. We're willing to work with you to get it. I think Donna had already put in place those that are already working with us from our ESO standpoint. You're working with a client already and we're setting up a vaccination appointment and need transportation, we agreed already that you can work with those persons. And we're doing in the field, just offering the service of helping them sign up. They wanted to do it in our offices first, any new customers that we have coming on board. But those that are already working with you and you're already working with them signing up, we said that was fine to leave it in that manner. But definitely we all need to work together to try to get as many people vaccinated as possible.
Because I heard on the news the other night that somebody with 2 vaccinations can still catch COVID. And there's been some cases of that. Mm-hmm. So it's a really, it's a very difficult disease to stay free from.
It is.
Lisa, I just wanted to make a comment that I'm really glad to hear that this is on the agenda to be helping people vote in vaccinations. My son is not on, but from a parent's perspective, there's a lot of things that you navigate. So to have the team of professionals be able to help, our folks with disabilities is huge. My son was able to go to a clinic. They provided transportation. and everything was, it was just taken care of. So he's now fully vaccinated. So I'm really glad to hear that providers are doing that. I think that's great.
Thank you, Teresa. Okay, if there are no other questions for me,
Well, there, not a question, but a thank you to you, Kathy, for acting upon the recommendation of this committee for the economic relief grants. They have been a godsend to a lot of us. So thanks.
thank you for that, Chuck. And what you recommended today sounds great. So I'm here. We just approved it.
I have a quick
Thank you again.
Go ahead.
This is Jason.
Where'd you go, Jason? There you are.
You said that VR applications were down 30%.
I said it was 30% in Alaska. I'm not sure exactly what our percent is. Dee Dee might know, but I know they're way down, that I've been looking at the numbers, and we have how many people in the system right now? 15,000?
16, almost 17. They're going back up, but yeah, we're down significantly from, I did a presentation and maybe 2 years ago this time, we had about 20,000 clients in the system.
Right.
Now we got about 17,000. So that is probably about 25, 30%.
And they're down in pre-ets, of course, with the schools, it's been so hard, and in VR.
Right. So does that mean that spending is also down about the same too?
Unfortunately,
down.
Spending is down, but not our ESO spending. We're pretty much hidden right where we have been when we were spending prior to COVID. Didn't take long to get back to that percentage of spending for ESOs.
And I'm going to give an update on that, Jason, on the ESO meeting on the 21st, whenever our next ESO update meeting is. Yeah, I'm going to do some comparisons.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
I'm done.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Kathy. It's good to see you and to hear from you. And we do appreciate your support of our efforts greatly. So that brings us to our next meeting, which is supposed to be, help me, this says April 13th. That's not right. Today is April 13th.
July
13th.
July 13th.
July 13th. Thank you. And we are fully hopeful that we'll be able to do in person. It would be so nice in a year after a year of these that we could meet in person, but we will make that determination at a later date based on what's going on in the world and with the state. Is there any agenda items anyone would like to ensure that are added to the agenda besides our kind of normal things that we have been reporting, the third quarter spending, the updates on the relief fund, and use of lettuce EES projected balances?
We'll need to wrap up the end of the year for 2021 and make recommendations for 2022 allocations.
Okay.
And that also will depend upon how free we are of this COVID thing by 2022 also.
Absolutely, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
This will be our topic for a while, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Any other agenda items for the next meeting?
This is Megan. Donna, do you think that you'll be done with your analysis of the rate increase? Can we put you on the agenda to present your findings? Or
well, you should know all that by May, before July 1st.
Okay.
You'll have all that before July 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Any of those will be effective July 1st. Those will be effective.
Great. That's great.
This is Chuck. I just have a quick housekeeping question. Were all of this appointed for 3-year terms so that the whole committee could potentially either renew after that first 3-year term or have changes. That's my recollection. Is that correct?
Yes,
Is it renew, or do people have to be renominated by senators and representatives in the governor's office again?
I think the
There's
bylaws
a-
provide for 2 consecutive 3-year terms.
Okay.
right, it's in
But
the
they-
bylaws, and it depends on if, if people fall off the committee. I know Stephanie took Sean's place, so her term will end when Sean's was supposed to end, but she can get a next term. So we can take a look at that. I have all of the dates of terms for all the members, and when they end, I can send that out to everyone as well with an update on renewal.
That would be great, Anita, because I have no idea.
Okay, Jim.
Thanks.
So Anita, would it behoove us to have a conversation around the bylaws and whether we want to look at a rolling term, if you will? I think when we first initially did it, everybody was assigned the 3 years, and we wrote the bylaws based on the legislation, but do we want to evaluate that as a committee, the 3-year rolling, so that
Well-
not everybody's rolling at the exact same time, or? is that
We
something
certainly can look at that, but we'd have to go back and look at the code, because that was developed based on the code that was written for the ESOSC. So we would definitely need to look at that and look at the details specifically around that.
Okay. So if you could do some research and maybe report back on that in July, that would be wonderful.
Okay, can do that.
Because I believe that the terms were through October. Am I correct in that? Or they started in October was the first meeting we held? in format?
Let's see.
In electronic format or wait?
No,
our
in the
first-
new.
No, the real meeting, first meeting.
Yeah, it was, the appointments were July 1st, 2019. That's when it began. I have to pull up my records, but I have all that documented. Let's see. The term end dates for all the committee members at this point is June 30th, 2022.
Okay, so we have a little bit of time to evaluate that and see
Right.
what kind of things we could do. So if you could do a little research, Anita, to see if we have any control over recommending a roll off or whatever, that would be of help to us as we go through the next year to try to figure out how we would
Do a
proceed
roll-off.
as a group
Yeah.
and in the future.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other business before the committee today? Hearing none, I will say that we did kind of make a decision to change the meeting time to 11 because we never went 4 hours, and here we are again at under 3 hours. So I think that was a good choice to do an 11 to 2 o'clock meeting. If no one has any objections, we will do that again at the next meeting in July. Having said that, is there a move to adjourn the meeting?
So move this, Chuck.
A second?
I second that, Jim.
Okay. I'm not going to do a roll call. Any opposition to adjournment? Hearing none, I thank everybody again for your time, and for those who are behind the scenes and helping us make sure that we met all of our requirements, the interpreters, we appreciate your hard work during this long meeting, and also for the DARS staff who helped to make sure that the streaming went well. We appreciate that. So thanks, everybody, and we will talk to you all again in July.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.